Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. So we're continuing on the holiday month here in the month of December as we record this in 2024. We ended up in the month of October, if you guys were following along, the month of October, we ended up doing some, I wouldn't say Halloween-specific movies, but we did the entire Blade trilogy and followed it up with Ghost Rider. So October ended up being sort of the holiday month. The Halloween month here on the show. And it worked out great, right? So unofficially, December is our Christmas month. On December 10th, we released Batman Returns. And today we're doing the movie that some folks, at least for them, is a classic and is in their regular rotation. It is definitely in my rotation. I got thoughts about it, but and we got a lot of backstage stuff to get here today too. And if you know anything about the backstory of this movie, man, do you know what happened? Hoy. Yeah, but we were talking a little bit off mic about that here today, but we will definitely get into it because today we're going to do Scrooged. And yes, as the name implies, it leans very, very heavily on the original source material written by one Charles Dickens, and that would be A Christmas Carol. So great cast, by the way, kids. Great leading man. We'll see how this plays out. Get your thought and see whether you liked it, you're indifferent to it, whether it's in your rotation. Always, of course, happy to hear comments, feedback, words of wisdom. So let's do this, shall we? Scrooged is a 1988 American Christmas fantasy black comedy film. Boy, that's a mouthful. Directed by the great Richard Donner and written by Mitch Glazer and Michael O'Donoghue. Based on the 1843 novella A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, Scrooge is a modern retelling that follows Bill Murray as Frank Cross, a cynical and selfish television executive who is visited by a succession of ghosts on Christmas Eve, intent on helping him regain his Christmas spirit. The film also stars a cavalcade of other Hollywood heavyweights in their respective roles, of which I'm sure you will recall or be able to identify, or they'll be very familiar to you, really no matter how age you are, unless you just don't ever watch TV in your life. Here comes the fun stuff. I always love the numbers part of this. As we say, directed by Richard Donner, screenplay by Mitch Glazer and Michael O'Donoghue, produced by Richard Donner and Art Liston. This film distributed by Paramount Pictures. Release date November 23rd, 1988. A running time is a total of 100 minutes. The budget for this film, this is a good one. The budget for this film is $32 million. The box office is $100.3 million. There you have it. There is your lowdown for Scrooged. So Phil, I feel like the Batman Returns episode was awesome. Both of us, really into it. Had a lot of great things to touch on and talk about. And, I think we pretty much answered the question whether or not it's a Christmas movie. It absolutely is a Christmas movie. So today, definitely is a Christmas movie because of the content, obviously because of what they're drawing from here, from the original Dickens novel. What is your take on Scrooge right off the bat? Do you watch this every Christmas season? What do you think?
Definitely a different take on a Christmas movie. It's definitely dark comedy. I think that it is a very funny movie. The bits of it that are kind of over the top and ridiculous are very funny to me. But I can see this confusing some people as well. And it's the same kind of conversation we had last week with Tim Burton making a Christmas movie, but also going further than just making a happy, jolly Christmas movie. Actually, like getting into the nuance of celebrating Christmas as an adult, and what would make somebody not be, the biggest fan of this holiday. And so that stuff in itself, it makes this movie kind of dark, but also there's some very graphic stuff in this movie for kids that they might think is pretty scary. I remember seeing it when I was a kid. This movie
Hmm.
came out in 1988, and so I believe I was 3 years old when this movie came out. And I remember seeing it when I was a kid on TV, and I was like, "Oh, these ghosts are like kind of scary." Like, especially the first ghost we see, he's like very graphically dead.
Very graphically dead. Yes, he is. I can't say I got freaked out by any of them. This thing came out in '88, so I was 15 when this movie came out. So I was kind of past the point of it kind of freaking me out. I will say the Ghost of Christmas Future is pretty good though. You kind of have to nail that one no matter what version of Scrooge you're doing. If you don't, the whole movie's blown in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. You have that, and you have stuff like him almost getting burned alive, and there are a few things that are kind of scary.
Yeah. God, the waiter in the restaurant.
Yeah, on fire, just completely burning alive. Um, yeah. Which by the way, I did not realize it until I've watched the movie in full because when I was a kid, I'd never made it through the whole movie. But um, but when I watched it in full, I was like, oh, that's a great tie back to later in the movie of him being afraid of this guy burning alive, and then he's stuck in the casket, potentially getting burned alive.
Oh, well done. Yeah, yeah. So do you watch this during the Christmas season or do you just catch it if it happens to be on a streamer somewhere?
I don't watch it regularly, but when I do sit down and watch it, I do appreciate it. It is
Hmm.
one of those that I believe now is a cult classic. I kind of believe that at this point, this movie was ahead of its time.
I agree with that. And dude, this cast.
Yeah, great cast.
Wow. Big names. Like we see a lot of those ensemble casts in movies now, and we appreciate them. But I wonder years from now if we'll look at movies like, Ocean's 11 and not and like Knives Out and all these other movies that bring together all these heavyweights. The Avengers films, will we look at these movies years from now and go, wow, that's crazy?
Yeah, a lot of great names in comedy in this. So many of them at some points, like man, I kind of wish they did more with that guy because he's just kind of in a few scenes and then we don't see him again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Yeah, good point. Well, let's talk about the guy at the top of this. As we said, kids, if you know anything about the making of anything behind the scenes, Bill Murray didn't exactly have the best time, and I don't think they exactly had the best time with him either. And my evidence by the fact that he and Richard Donner, of course, we know from Superman fame, a legend, they did not enjoy working together, which created a lot of tension. When asked by Roger Ebert if he had any disagreements with Donner, Murray said, only a few every single minute of the day. That could have been a really, really great movie. The script was so good. There's maybe one take in the final cut movie that is mine. We made it so fast, it was like doing a movie live. He kept telling me to do things louder, louder, louder. I think he was deaf. So, look, Murray, right? As you know, when the lead doesn't deliver, the movie's going to tank. Doesn't matter how great the effects are, how wonderfully written the story is, no matter how many heavyweights you put around him, if the lead does not deliver, the movie doesn't work. Does this movie work for you? Are there moments where Bill Murray's not delivering? Do you chalk that up to him just being him? What do you think?
I think he delivers as a lead. This is clearly not his best holiday themed movie. Of course, that would be Groundhog Day.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even the spots where it looks like he is unhappy making this movie, it's disguised by the fact that his character is very angry and brooding throughout the movie anyway. And so I think it works him being miserable making some of this movie and some of the stuff that he improvs later on. You can tell that it's very improv. I think it works I'm sure we'll get into the ending of the movie and the intent behind it and whether it actually works. Um, but I think for the most part, he plays this role very well. He gets all of the cynical, nasty stuff throughout the movie across very well. He gets the emotional bits where he needs to show some more range as well. I mean, this is Bill Murray. He's a comedic genius, and so the stuff that he is doing in this character, where he's got to be crotchety and mean, he's great at it. Some of the highlights of the movie is him being over the top and funny. Uh, I've seen this movie multiple times, but when he plays that commercial,
Yes.
it's so funny because the commercial is so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. Um, but the cuts back to him while the commercial is playing with that red light over his face, and he's just got this big, uh, angry look on his face, like, yeah, that'll show him, that'll get him to watch. Very, very funny.
And he's mouthing along with the narrator.
Yes, he's doing it in like this ominous, almost like movie trailer voice as well.
Yes. So when the doors open, all right, the first executive takes out a handkerchief and wipes his forehead. Well, actually covers his mouth like he's going to throw up. The second one's got this disgusted look. One guy's dabbing his armpits under his suit jacket.
It's so funny. It's so ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Everything about that bit is funny in itself because it's such a great it's such great satire on where the entertainment business was going from then on, especially TV and just the marketing ploys. And we see more of that throughout the movie of the marketing ploys to get people to watch TV or keep their TV on because got to get those ratings. But the fake trailers they play early on for IBC uh, are very funny. Some of the highlights of this movie as well is the first maybe 10 minutes or so where we're getting those fake commercials. And then he airs this commercial that's just completely ridiculous. I bust out laughing every time they talk about the terrorists and they show the airplane and it just explodes out of nowhere. It looks like the fakest explosion ever. It's so stupid.
Then they drop a bomb, right? Big mushroom cloud.
Yeah. All of these things, like, what do these things have to do with each other or Christmas or A Christmas Carol?
Yeah. Freeway shooting. The white kid leans out the window of the car with a shotgun.
Oh.
Like, what is happening here? You know, I don't know that you remember those days of 80s television, how much you know about it or whatever. It was very much, and I'm going to make myself sound like I grew up in the 50s. For anybody that didn't grow up in the 80s, you better believe that the threat of nuclear war hung over us constantly. It was being talked about in school all the time. Russia was the big bad, and it was, at any moment they're going to send the missiles, Phil. I'm legit telling you that this was, I worried about nuclear war as a kid. I'm straight up worried about it. Like, and TV didn't help because they had, I'll never remember the name of it now. There was a TV movie that got all kinds of ratings and made all kinds of headlines when it came out. It was like a miniseries. And man, it was about nuclear war. And it shook me as a child. It flat out shook me. Jason Robard was in it and some other, heavyweights. Man, like, I'm just saying, dude, like, I get your point. That's what the beginning of this movie feels like to me.
Yeah. Definitely feels like this executive at a TV channel, like whatever to get people to watch. Like, who cares? I love later when he gets the reaction, when he gets the article about the woman killing over while watching it. He's like, "Oh my god, this is great."
Yeah.
Can you imagine the response and coverage? We're going to get to this now. Get this commercial on several times a day now.
I think one of the things that makes A Christmas Carol work is that in that book, when he changes, he impacts so many lives immediately around him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for the better, of course. There's moments through the years as I watched this movie. By the end, I always ask myself, how many people did he really impact? Like, his secretary's son is not, dying of a disease. He can walk. He's not talking. He's been traumatized, which is terrible. But, he helps him. You see what I'm saying? Are the stakes as high for this version of Scrooge as for other versions that we've seen, you think?
Yeah, but that's what's so interesting about the ending. Um, because it does fit. There's a stark shift for him where he sees the error of his ways.
Mm.
And then he goes on this very uncomfortable um, tirade during the live airing of this play, which the fact that they're doing A Christmas Carol live is also so funny. But
Yes.
and then you've got like tumblers and dancers and all this other stuff in it that does not fit this period piece at all. But sure, why not? But so he then comes in at the end of this special and he's doing his monologue and he's trying to appeal to people about what Christmas should mean and just being a miracle for somebody once and that feeling so good that you want to chase that feeling. And it's a good monologue, but there are bits of it that are very uncomfortable. And I get that's supposed to be the intent, that it's
Mm.
uncomfortable because
Mm.
it's live TV and he is, bearing his soul on live TV. Uh, but some of it doesn't age great. One of the funniest things about it when I rewatch it now is you get all the way to the end of it, and he gets his ex to come back. He gets the girl, and he looks up, and the ghosts are on top of that building, and the homeless guy that dies in the sewer is up there as well. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute. So the message of this is that this big, wealthy television exec got his ex-girlfriend that works at a homeless shelter to leave her job to come celebrate Christmas with him, and he gets to be the good guy. And this homeless person that died of neglect, really because of him, is waving and saying, "Great job, man! You really did it." Wait, wait a minute.
Yes.
Wait, hold on.
You killed me, but it's all right.
It's all right, man. Look, all right, long as you learned your lesson.
Yeah. As long as you took something away from all this, it's fine.
I'm so proud of you, buddy. I'm
I'm so
so
proud
glad
of
you
you.
learned the lesson.
Yeah, he didn't save him.
Well,
Like, he doesn't really save anybody, does he? Like,
I mean, you can infer that he saved Grace's son's life, Calvin.
yeah,
You can infer that, he saved his ex from, you know, going down a wrong path based
sure.
on the visions he saw. You could also infer that he used his power as an executive to put a message out to the world that Christmas is more than just like the commercialization of this holiday and using this thing for ratings and all these things. It's about actually trying to connect with people and actually being in people's lives in a genuine way.
Yeah,
But also, he used that moment to get people to keep watching the show. He
he
didn't stop the
did.
broadcast. He used that moment to keep people watching the show.
Although he did say, "Why are you at home watching TV on Christmas Eve? What are you watching this for?"
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, now, could we be over analyzing and nitpicking at certain things? Sure. But there are things about this when you think about it. It's like, well, wait a minute. The bit with the homeless guy being a ghost is really the thing that doesn't hold up the most out of that entire ending. Because it's like,
yeah,
well, hold on, this guy died in a very painful way in the sewers, in a very like extreme way as well. And yeah, that's fine. At least he gets the girl, and he learned a lesson.
he got Karen Allen. I don't know what the problem is. He got Karen Allen. I don't know.
Listen, man, put a little love in your heart, man.
Oh, I hate that song. And look, the Reverend's on it. Al Green's on the song. I shouldn't be hating it. I hate this song with every fiber of my being.
Well, but see, I think that's kind of the brilliance of this movie as well. Is that you spend so much of this movie, if you're kind of a bah humbug, I don't like Christmas guy, like our main characters, that you're supposed to understand that he's made this complete 180, that he's doing something very schmaltzy, and he's taking a very schmaltzy Christmas song and
Hmm.
making that a part of his redemption.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, I get it. I still hate the song.
Yeah,
But
you gotta love the connection to him going full improv at it, and then like making it interactive with the live audience that's supposed to be the live TV audience, but also the live movie going audience. When he starts talking directly to the screen afterwards, and he's like, "Yeah, everybody sing along," and it almost feels like, funny enough, the end of an episode of Saturday Night Live.
it does, doesn't it? Oh, that's very good. With the piano playing and the horn playing. Yeah. And Paul Schaefer is in this, by the way. Got some Saturday Night Live connections through the years. And basically, if it involves music in somewhere in New York, he's been attached to it. So he's here. The great Miles Davis is in this movie. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, very brief appearance from him.
I love when he goes through there and says, "These idiots are gonna, what's going on? Come on." He's all pissed off at him.
Like, these idiots out here playing Christmas music, like all this is annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is some of the highlight of the movie, of him just being annoyed and being as rude and nasty to people as possible. When he steals that old lady's cab, it is funny every time.
Oh, man. It's like, why did the cops do something about this? He's like, did you learn this song yesterday? It's like, what a jerk, man. Oh my. Yeah. Well, look, kids, the point of this version of Scrooge, consider the multiverse. Different Superman in every multiverse, right? At least a different shade or a different version or a different name or whatever. Different powers, perhaps. This version of Scrooge is very much that 80s yuppie who was motivated to succeed in his job in the corporate world, was doing everything he could possibly do to get there. And in the process of doing so, lost himself and became not such a great person, which is kind of the Dickens version of the original, I would say. So, at least to that extent, we kept and we maintained. It's worth noting that Murray ad-libbed most of his lines. Not shocking at all, because it very much has that feel. And in an interview with Philadelphia Daily News in '88, Richard Donner discussed Murray's penchant for improvisation and described the experiences of directing Murray as follows. It's like standing on 42nd Street and Broadway and the lights are out and you're the traffic cop. Dude, I'm telling you, hurt feelings and bad days abound in the making of this film, man.
Yeah, isn't there a quote where he says like he's a very talented comedian, brilliant, but yeah, I had more than a few difficulties with him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he was trying to be diplomatic, but yeah, for sure. According to Murray, a lot of footage ended up on the cutting room floor. He says, we shot a big, long, sloppy movie. So there's a great deal of material that didn't even end up in the film. It just didn't work. You tend to forget what was wrong. It's hard. I just figured that anyone who's good could step into this part and have a lot of fun with it. It's sort of a wicked character. The idea of making a funny Scrooge was an inspired touch. That was what was appealing to me about it. Feel I got one thing to say about that cutting room floor footage of the movie Scrooged. Release the Donner cut.
Oh God. Oh no.
Why have we never seen it, I wonder? Have you heard of that being released on anywhere? Because I haven't.
Donner and the writers probably want nothing to do with it.
I would
That's what
say.
my guess is.
I would say. Well, you know, it's the Kevin Smith school of editing. Like he loves editing. He's like, don't fall in love with anything. If it doesn't have to go in, don't put it in. Leave it on the floor. There's a reason why we leave it here. We're not going to put it in. We don't need it.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that's what happened. Well, look again. I wanted us to spend a good chunk on the main character because I think it's worth it. I usually save questions like this till the end, but I'll be honest with you, they're going to keep remaking A Christmas Carol far beyond you and me are on this planet, I would say, and it's fine. The story's fantastic. The notion, the sentiment of it is great, and I don't think it. I think it ages just fine, and I don't think those concepts of someone changing themselves. I don't think they'll ever get old. I don't think it could. I don't think it could. I don't think it's dated in any form. I mean, depending on era it's made in, of course, but like, I think it could always translate. Dude, if you were going to do a Scrooge movie today, what actor would you put in this role? If you were going to make it dark, if you're going to make it funny, who do you think could handle this that would make it a hit?
Um, if you want to do it the same way with
Hmm.
like the dark comedy,
Yeah.
uh, Robert Downey Jr. That's the easy one.
I swear to God, I was thinking Robert Downey Jr., man. I think it's a good pull. I think it's a great call, man, because he's old enough to be believable as the guy that's been on top in his industry for years. And he's just evil enough. And he's just such a phenomenal actor. He could absolutely pull it off.
I would go even further to say because we've seen so many versions of Christmas Carol. Um, Definitely one of the most influential pieces of literature of all time.
Mm,
Uh, but the Marvel Christmas special that you could have done this with Tony Stark would have been great.
would have been great. It would have been great. Because we kind of got that in the first Iron Man. He did change. Like, I don't know. Maybe we got a version of it anyway, Phil.
I mean, sure, we did basically get an Iron Man Christmas movie as well.
That's true. Yeah. We
Iron
endorse that
Man
movie here on this show, kid, in
Iron Man
case you didn't
3
know.
is a Christmas movie, by the way.
Yeah.
It is.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about some of the other characters here, some of the other cast who have come along for the ride. I mentioned Karen Allen earlier of Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark fame. Karen Allen has a very homey, natural quality, very earthy quality. She absolutely looks like she could have been at Woodstock. Like, at least in this film, that's kind of how she's portrayed, like a free spirit, but a very caring individual, very happy, smile that just lights up the room. And dude, I love that from the moment she reconnects with him, with Cross here, that she's absolutely not happy. Like, she can see that something is, yeah, this guy's gotten much worse than what I've thought or what I remember. What do you think of Karen Allen as Claire Phillips across from Bill Murray as Frank Cross?
I think she's great. I think she fits the role perfectly. Um, in both the scenes where she is reintroduced on a set, and you can see how just like smitten he is with her, and she is just kind of like you can see that there's still something there, but also you can see her reservations to go. I kind of need to get away from this guy, but I want
Hmm.
to do it in the nicest way possible without hurting his feelings. But I kind of need to get away from this guy. But also the scene where we see how they met and him getting up from getting the door slammed in his face. A lot of very violent slapstick comedy from him in this movie, by the way. Um, it's
For sure.
that is sometimes feels a little much, but it's often very funny. But yeah, he gets hit by the door, and then he gets up, and the first thing he sees is her with this big smile, and you buy it. You buy that she is the type of person that would be able to reach him.
That's a good point. Yeah, good point. She could reach him. That door hitting him is fantastic. That little exchange they have back and forth. And then, like, when they're going to leave, and he's like, "What side of the street you normally walk on?" So I can walk on the other side. It's really good.
Yeah.
Like, he's charming in such a very subtle way, you know?
Yes. Yes. I love also that we get the idea from his character of not just being, TV is his life because it's where he works, but um, we get the story that he spent so much time watching TV as a kid, and that was his only outlet. He just watches TV constantly. And so you can see a lot of his wit and everything. It feels like a television character.
That's really good. Like nothing in his life is real because everything's an act. Everything is a
Yes.
production.
Yes. A lot of his like quick retorts to people, his sharp wit, and even like his biting sarcasm, it all feels like a television character.
Hmm. Yeah. That well, look, the connective tissue here between him and the original character and how they translate it just makes so much sense. And I think they did the best they could with translating it to the modern day when this was made. And I think it works. There are just moments of his portrayal here where I kind of feel like I just I don't know that he cares that he's here. But can I be honest? I got that feeling during the first Ghostbusters. But I don't think it's the roles. I think it's just his delivery and how he acts.
Yes. I do think he's played so many characters that have this same kind of range of emotions of I guess I have to be dragged into this adventure. That I can't tell how much of that is him just being very convincing in a role or how much he is just kind of miserable and difficult to deal with in life. Um, and yeah, I read something about this being his first movie after the success of Ghostbusters and how much he was put off of acting in Hollywood because um, he never intended to have that level of success or that level of fame. And I can see him coming back after that and doing this movie and going, "Oh, this will probably be just such a big difference than what else I'm doing." So yeah, I'm just gonna try and do all of this comedy stuff that I might not have gotten a chance to do in a room with creative like Harold Ramis, um, but that also did make for a good experience for everybody that uh, wrote the script or
Hmm.
had an idea or a vision for this movie outside of his.
Do you think it has a lot to do with if he is the lead, then like he was the lead in Stripes, but he had Harold Ramis by his side the entire film. You think it's got something to do with it?
No, I mean because uh, Groundhog Day is a classic,
That's true.
fantastic movie. What about Bob? Also, great movie, very funny in
Yes.
that movie.
Gone. He's never gone. He opens the door and he's right there.
Baby steps.
Yeah. Well, on Groundhog Day, he had Harold Ramis directing. On One About Bob, he had, a veteran actor across from him. I mean, I don't know. There's part of me that just wonders if, Donner's a legend, but evidently, not evidently, they obviously didn't get along. And everyone had a great reaction to Robert Mitchum on this set and loved him. And he just kept everybody busy with stories all day. And evidently, nobody could get a word in, but they didn't care because he was very polite and had such great stories about being in the industry. And people just couldn't wait to. It's kind of like a veteran walking into a pro wrestling locker room and sort of holding court. So I don't know. There's just part of me that just still wonders to this day, like, did he ever get the vehicle that it was just him where he truly embraced it and said, all right, I'm going to crush this. I don't know. It just always felt like he was never that guy. Like Aykroyd to me felt more like the guy of, I got to prove something. But I don't know if I ever got that from Murray.
Yeah, I do think that there was reluctance with the level of fame that he got,
Yeah.
and that might be what came across sometimes with him as a leading man.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. Well, uh, again, I think Karen Allen is really, really good here across from him. I think they look good together too. Like physically, it looks like they match.
Yes. Um,
Um, yeah.
especially early in the movie where his hair is more bushy and he's got like that big mullet going that he popularized at one point. They look like they fit together.
Mm.
And when he gets older and he cuts his hair down and he's got it more slicked back, um, Yeah, you're right, and even he's got this big goofy hat on, and he's buying into all this Christmas stuff, and like I say, he gets the girl, and it doesn't look like it doesn't fit. It looks like yeah, this works. This looks like she fits with him because she is a polar opposite to him.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Let's talk about John Forsythe was his boss. This is as Lou Hayward. Hayward in this movie, kids, is basically Jacob Marley. And this was his old boss who in the flashbacks, Ghost of Christmas Past, he's trying to impress. Forsythe, an absolute legend in Hollywood, had a massive career. He was very successful. The guy turns out, Phil, a lot of those older actors, turn out to be very good at comedy too.
Hmm.
Uh, Leslie Nielsen pops into mind. Like those straight edge, hardcore 1950s through 70s actors, you're like, they're all drama. No, not true. Like they had sense of humor. And I think Forsyth was one of them. I thought when he came back, that was like I know it's just prosthetics, what we would call prosthetics now, like makeup or whatever. That is some of the grossest stuff. For even at that age, I'm like, all right, this is nasty. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah, that's what I was saying earlier with how uh disgusting this ghost was initially. It just it freaked me out when I was a kid because it's supposed to be this Christmas movie. He, you've got stuff like his drying, decayed
Ugh.
muscles and skin being peeled and ripped off. Um, I love when I love when Bill Murray shoots him and he's making all the sound effects while he's shooting him. In another world, I definitely believe Bill Murray would have been the voice for Rocket Raccoon. By the way, if that movie is made
Oh,
earlier on, Bill Murray is the voice,
I freaking love that.
and
Yeah.
and it just made me think about it because him making the sound effects when he was shooting him, because that was a bit that Rocket did in the comics at one point when Bendis was writing him. But yeah, when he's shooting him, and then he's like, "Yeah, easy on the Bacardi.
Yeah.
I don't care what you do to me, but easy on the Bacardi." What a great line. His delivery is fantastic. He's got
Fantastic.
this gravelly voice that fits with the prosthetics and the makeup perfectly. Um, he's fantastic in the little bits that we get of him.
And the mouse that comes out of the back of his head, dude.
Oh, so disgusting.
Oh man. And of course he's dressed in golf attire, which makes us assume that's how he died.
Hmm.
I would assume. And when he takes that drink, it just comes out of all over all the holes. Oh man. His makeup is really, really well done, by the way.
Yes, I believe it was nominated for Academy Award for makeup. Correct?
Makeup artist Thomas Berman and Barry Berman were responsible for the film's single nomination at the Academy Awards for Best Makeup. They lost to Beetlejuice.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll go figure. That yeah, Beetlejuice makes sense. That year, a lot of the makeup, the set designs, and a lot of stuff in that movie. Yeah, that
Hmm.
tracks.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Forsyth is great here. We also have Robert Mitchum. We'll mention him again. He is Preston Rhinelander. This character is so absurd and out of his gourd. He wants him to make programming for cats and dogs. But again, Mitchum's an older guy and he's got a great sense of humor and he was awesome. I love this character, man.
Yeah, same. I loved it. He um again just this satire on going from the golden age of television, golden age of Hollywood, to this guy and him trying to be as exploitative as possible and using every ploy to get people to watch and keep your television on. And you can see how slimy this guy is. He's sitting and having dinner with him and the other guy that's basically trying to transparently take his job.
Yeah.
um, and everything about it, just the three of them, the uncomfortable air of silence when they're sitting together at some points. And he does such a great job of getting you to kind of feel like, oh, this guy kind of makes my skin crawl. But he's also very funny as well.
He is. Yeah. He's very funny. Yeah, that whole cats and dogs thing, freaking nuts, man. And like, there are actually networks that are doing that stuff now, where they're actually, it's hard to believe, but they're actually doing that now, where they're like creating programming for pets. Like, I don't know, what world are we living in here?
Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you.
But no, I thought he was great here. And by the way, we had to shout out Danny Elfman. We just talked about him for Batman Returns. Dude, if you didn't know who did the music, the moment you heard it, you're like, that's got to be Danny Elfman.
Yes.
He did a good job here too, by the way. I really liked it.
Yeah, I thought the music fit here. With Richard Donner and a lot of stuff that we know, of course, ties to Superman films. Yeah, I thought that this worked. It didn't feel like music that I've heard from other things that he composed for. You could definitely tell it was his compositions, but it didn't feel derivative.
No, it didn't. No, I think it fit just fine. So I don't want to get too far without mentioning Lee Majors, the fall guy himself. And or the $6 Million Man as well, of course. So he, meaning Richard Donner, wanted Chuck Norris for that part, but Norris couldn't make it because he was doing something else. So, are you familiar at all with the $6 Million Man from the 70s, Phil?
Yes, of course. I've seen the opening credits and I've seen a lot of the jokes about it.
Mhm.
Of course, there's the reference to it in The Simpsons as well. So I know of it, but I've never seen the actual television show. I've never seen any episodes of it.
I grew up watching it. It was, I'm sure now it's the hokiest thing you've ever seen, but as a kid, it was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, but,
But
but that just again just ties to this gap between that era of Hollywood and what television was and what television is now. And
Mhm.
just imagining Lee Majors, I would assume, in a show where they kept the violence to a minimum, and he's doing this very violent movie that he's in now. We've got Santa Claus, all these gun-toting elves and everything. And it's so funny because it's like, what is he doing in this movie?
yeah, how did he just showed up on a snowmobile with a machine gun. I don't know. Like,
TV's Lee Major.
yeah, TV's Lee Majors. Got to quantify what he is, where he's been. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite bits of people doing that from TV. TV's Lee Majors. What are you doing here? It's a very Scooby Doo bit because
Oh,
they have those
yeah.
cameos like that as well.
Doesn't matter hill of beans what happens to me, but world can't live without Santa Claus. Like, oh, you've been a very good boy this year, Lee. Right?
Those commercials, that's so funny.
Oh my God, that's awesome. He plays himself. So does the great John Houseman. Again, Phil, older dudes who end up, they don't have to try very hard. What made them a star in drama also works in comedy because John Houseman was hilarious. Robert Goulet, kind of the same thing. Although Robert Goulet, I would imagine, has always had a sense of humor. He's here as himself. We mentioned Miles Davis, Paul Schaefer. David Sanborn is on the street playing with him. He's a legend as well. But we got Buddy Hackett as Scrooge. All right. And Mary Lou Retton as Tiny Tim. And she's like doing backflips and stuff. Yeah.
That's another one of those I bust out laughing when I see it because they're showing all this stuff for Christmas Carol, and again, it's a live rendition of Christmas Carol, and you've got these women doing basically the can and dancing, and then you have her flipping out of nowhere. I'm like, why is Tiny Tim a woman
Right.
And then why would she be flipping? Like, isn't part of the bit of the original story is that he walks with a limp and he can't. He's got a crutch.
Yes, of
So
course.
why is she flipping? Why is she flipping?
Maybe they were saving that to the end when Scrooge did the 180 and became a better person.
I can't believe it. I feel so much better, and then just goes and does like these series of flips.
Oh man, that's fun. We also had Jamie Farr as Jacob Marley, which I think we only saw him one time and then never saw him again. Not sure what happened there. He's of MASH fame, if you ever know the character of Klinger. Fantastic. And Anne Ramsey, who's in the homeless shelter with her husband, Logan Ramsey. Anne Ramsey, of course, threw Mama from the Train and Goonies.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Throw Mama from a Train. What a relic from that time period.
Love that movie. You kidding me? Oh my God, I love that movie. Oh, I can't wait to do that one. That's going to be a good one. Such a great movie. I'm going to start quoting it if we stay on it too long. But yeah, John Glover is freaking great in this whole movie. One of the I've gotten more, like, I don't know, joy is a dumb word, but it is a Christmas season. I've gotten more joy out of watching John Glover. He's probably on my list of actors that I can enjoy in anything he does. I mean, he's fantastic. Like you said, he's kind of like a slimy guy trying to take, cross his jaw right from in front of him. He's got the 80s hair, the 80s shirts, and like he's got the yuppie vibe happening. Dude, he is fantastic in this movie, man.
He's great and he's believable because we've seen him do a variation of this character before. Of course, in Gremlins, he's the big executive in that movie. I'm pretty sure we've seen him do executive roles before, but like you said, he's got the yuppie hair. He almost feels like he feels like the Christian Bale character from American Psycho. He just there's something about him that just looks off. Every time he shows up, there are bits of this that feel like a horror movie, and I'm sure that's intentional, but he's just got this smirk on his face the entire time. He's like, "Look, I'm not here. You don't have anything to worry about with me." And the whole time, he's expecting all of these ghosts and stuff to show up, and then this guy shows up at this time, and there's a bit of him that feels off, but then it's also just this vibe of sliminess because he's trying to take his job.
Yeah, he's so great. Like, he's making out like he's his buddy. Hey, buddy, where you been? I was word of death about you. He just kept saying that to him.
he nails that kind of small talk that you would hear in offices and the way that those kind of people smooth and mingle with people. He
Yes.
completely inauthentic, and he nails it. He's fantastic, like you said. Even when he gets, his quote unquote comeuppance in the final act. It's so funny because his facial expressions throughout the whole thing are great.
Yeah. He when he comes back, I think it was from the Ghost of Christmas Present, and he stumbles back into the set. And Glover's character has already, like, he's done the break for lunch. And he's like, I usually do the break for lunch. Like, oh, you know what? I didn't mean to step on you. Just hold on a second, Frank. And he takes the megaphone. He's like, everybody come back. Frank got something we want to say. And he spins it around right and puts it right up to his mouth. And Murray doesn't flinch. That's a great bit of physical comedy right there, man.
Yeah. Bryce, that's his name, right?
Bryce, yes.
Yeah, just everything about it. Him like, look, you're in control here, man. I'm just here trying to help you.
Yeah. Now, look, some guys be threatened by Misha, but look, I just want to let you know, I'm just here to help. Like, man, you're a slime ball, dude. Who are you fooling right now?
Yeah, man. He's so great in Gremlins too, man.
He is.
He's so great. Of course, in Smallville and a bunch of other things, he's phenomenal actor.
He is. Lionel Luthor, I'm telling you right now, like, Michael Rosenbaum had a lot to live up to, and he did a fantastic job as Lex. But man, trying to share the screen with Glover and that could not have been easy. because he was just that freaking great, man. We have not yet mentioned Bobcat Goldthwait as Elliot Loudermilk. I'm not saying he was not that he was miscast. I'm not saying that the role was miscast. But there are moments when I'm like, this kind of feels like it, man, I don't know. It's going to sound odd. This kind of maybe could have been anybody. Like, I think he was really good as sort of the bumbling, sheepish, he spoke up for himself when maybe he shouldn't have. And then he goes crazy at the end with the shotgun. But like, he's a classic, man. I mean, how anybody could be upset at this guy, I don't know. But what did you think about Bobcat here in this movie?
There's two things that are brilliant about it.
Mhm.
And I agree, this could have been anybody, but it is kind of funny that it's Bobcat and just that time period, and uh, like his place in comedy at that time as well. I I'm sure you'd have a hard time explaining to people that didn't grow up in the 80s or 90s, like what is the significance of this actor being here.
Mm.
And that's where it kind of feels like it's a miscast because it's very much you had to be there. You had to be there to understand the Bobcat craze because he was huge at one point. I mean,
Massive.
huge. Um, but I love that he starts this movie as very sheepish and because we're so used to him being very loud and doing the shtick that he does with his voice, and so when you see him early in the movie, he's so subdued and like straight laced. He's got the bow tie and everything. He's like trying to be as nice and polite when because you can see that he's afraid of of Cross. Like
Mm.
he's trying to give his input, and it's very well-meaning input. But he's just like, well, look, this is just my. You don't have to take my opinion. Just my opinion. Um, and he does all that stuff very well so that when he does make this shift later and he comes back drunken with the gun and it's more of what we're used to him doing with the voice and he's singing and he's like having this whole he's having this whole breakdown. It's fantastic because
Yeah.
it's so different than what we saw him doing early in the movie. But also the thing that's brilliant about it is they again do this thing with television and how television has warped minds, and you see what it's done to Cross growing up watching TV constantly. But the very thing that Cross tried to do with this commercial and fearmonger, it ended up blowing up in his face because you had somebody literally try to come back and kill you with a gun.
No kidding. Like, that should be a clue you've probably done something wrong. Like,
Yeah. Um, it's an immediate effect of how he treated people as an employer, but
yeah.
it also is an effect of what he was putting on television as well, and that's
Mm.
rather brilliant to me.
Wow. Great call, dude. Yeah. I really like that idea. Yeah. He encouraged this sort of retaliatory, this sort of, dark view of everything. Like, he was putting that stuff out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see this being a mixed bag for some people. Like, what is Bobcat doing here? But I thought he did well. The cutbacks to him throughout the movie before he shows up with the gun are also very funny.
Mhm.
When he's trying to drink out of that wet bag and the bottle falls straight through it and smashes. So good.
Because he loses his job and everything goes to crap after that. I do love when he shows up with a shotgun and Murray's like very calmly, "Give me a head start." He's like, "Oh yeah, sure." He gives him a few steps and then starts firing on him. Like they just have these little moments of humanity between the two of them before all the chaos starts again.
Yeah,
Oh, that's really
doesn't
good.
even bother to plead for his life. He's just like, oh,
No. Because he's aware, right? He knows what he is. No sense in making excuses now, And by the way, to the point of what you were saying, I can absolutely testify everything you said is true. Bobcat at one time was the hottest thing on the planet because of Police Academy.
mm-hmm.
And if anybody thought he was in the first one, you got that wrong. He started in part 2 in 85, part 3 in 86, And 1 year before this movie was released, he was in part 4. So he was still very much on the minds of people when this movie came out.
Yes. But yeah, if you weren't there, it's hard to kind of get you to understand how big of a deal Bobcat was at one point.
So good. Hilarious, too. Very hilarious. Kind of like Sam Kinison. He was blessed with a voice that could do things, and it just created a character for him. Crazy. Speaking of Sam Kinison, let's talk about the Ghost real quick, because I want to circle back to a couple of other heavy hitters here. But we've got David Johansen as the Ghost of Christmas Past. Kids, talk about 80s and 90s. If you know anything about Buster Poindexter, this is Buster Poindexter. And he got his start in the New York Dolls in New York, of course, and he was friends with Bill Murray. That's why Kinison didn't get this part, because Murray wanted his friend to be in this movie.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, dude, I thought he was great. That wise talking New York cab driver. Fantastic. When they're sitting there at the dog and he's like, it's a bone. It's a bone. And he's yelling, just having time of his life, man.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I think one of the great things about this movie is their renditions of the ghosts and how they modernized them. To have a cab driver be the guy that's like taking him to all of these places from his past, that made a lot of sense with what his character was. And going with this guy who's got like this big obnoxious laugh, and he's smoking the entire time. He's got I mean, before he even says anything, he's got this visual humor going, because he's got like just the way that he carries himself, his mannerisms and everything are already funny. And again, when I saw this as a kid, the ghost just freaked me out. But because he's so over the top and cartoonish, it just works. And the way they play off each other is great. The way he plays off of all of the ghosts, which you'd expect, is a big part of the dynamic if you're going to do Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
But the way he plays off him in general, like you said, when he's in there and he's yelling at the top of his lungs like he's one of the kids, and he's having a blast watching this, and Bill Murray's trying to tug at him and tell him to sit down the whole time.
Yeah.
So great.
It's a bone, you lucky dog. Oh my God, it's great. Oh, really good stuff. We also have, as the Ghost of Christmas Present, Carol Kane. Carol Kane, for her time and everything that she did, comedy legend, had a lot of big roles under her belt. And she is freaking hilarious. She's in Princess Bride, of course. Let's see, Dog Day Afternoon, Annie Hall. We're talking big, massive films.
Oh,
I mean, she's done a lot of stuff.
Heaven,
Yes.
Addams Family as well.
That's right.
Later on, and several things. Very funny.
Very funny.
I would submit that she steals the show in
Yes.
everything she's in.
Yes.
She is incredibly funny. The physical humor she does with Bill Murray is so great, because she just lays these punches into him. It's so funny. The shock of her hitting him with the toaster.
Yeah.
It's so funny, because you don't know what she's doing at first. And I love that they do this very funny thing of juxtaposing her talking very lightly and having like this bubbly personality. She's got this very sparkly, pretty princess dress on with like the fairy wings and everything. But she's also very violent, which again is a play off of what he started this movie doing, of being like, no, this is what TV is now. It's extreme violence. It's all these things. And she's just extremely violent. To have this guy that the Ghost of Christmas Past be a cab driver, and her be this present day fairy, and it builds into like that time period and the growth of Disney and what Disney was at that time period. And then also very, very violent.
Very violent. And is the Ghost of Christmas Present? It's his present, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Dude, you're right. I was going to say the word steal the show. Absolutely. She's freaking great, man.
Boink Studios is the home of Tom Clark's Main Event, Tom Clark's 6M podcast, and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Visit the site today for links to every podcast platform, social media, special announcements, and a lot more. Check out the site and bookmark today, boinkstudios.com.
The Ghost of Christmas Future, just a dude in a suit, no lines. They hardly ever get lines, do the Ghost of Christmas Future. But, that's part of their charm. We have not yet mentioned the great Alfre Woodard as Grace Cooley. There are moments in this movie where I'm like, how in the world did she get in this movie? Because it's like, man, she just grounds this film. She's like the most real thing in this movie. And of course, she's great. She's got that freaking 90s haircut, or that 80s haircut, the mid to late 80s haircut. God bless her. But man, she's so good in everything. And she just brings this movie another dimension that it wouldn't have had she not been here.
Yes. Yeah, she is great. Another one, phenomenal actress. She has done tons of movies, tons of television. Can't say enough about her incredible career. And you're right, she's great here because, we're just explaining the Ghost of Christmas Present and how over the top and cartoonish she is. And she's playing off of Bill Murray, who is over the top. And she grounds this movie because she feels like a real person. Everything she's going through feels very real. And she does such a great job of playing off him. He's saying all these very mean things and doing terrible things, and she's just like, "Oh, okay. Like, look, this is just a job, man. Let me just get through my day, and I'm going home." When she's writing down all of the Christmas presents, towel, and she's just like, "You sure? Yeah, towel."
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also love that he's got so many characters around him, and this is just how life is and how funny life can be the older you get. And it's always somebody like this character that is a terrible person, or it's terrible to people around him, inconsiderate, rude, all these other things. But you've got all these people around them are trying to cover for them and are looking like, well, you know how he is, but under his surface, he's more bark than bite. And I love her dynamic with him of going, this is a terrible guy. I didn't get a Christmas bonus. I ended up getting a towel as a bonus. But I know better for him in this moment. I'm going to try and save him for himself and send his brother an actually good Christmas present.
Yeah, which she does. And man, when he grabs her kid, there's moments when I'm like, even now, I'm like, I know we got to put over the fact that this guy's not a good dude, but that's going a little far. Like, what are you doing here? How'd you get here? Who do you work for? Something? Did he work here? And I'm like, what are you talking? He's a child.
Yeah, I'm sure a good amount of that was improv. And
sure,
those were some of the lines that were a little bit too much. You probably could have dialed that back a little bit.
Yeah, a little much, but yeah, he's again, we got to remind people of just how bad he is. So, yeah, absolutely figured it out for sure. They all right. So, in the flashback scenes, Brian Doyle Murray, of course, Bill's brother, is playing his dad. Bill's other brother, John Murray, is actually playing his brother James. So they're keeping it all in the family here. We have to mention Grace's mother, Mabel King, which if you grew up in the 70s and the 80s, you know that's Mama from What's Happening. And we actually lost her in 99 at age 66, way too young. Love What's Happening. God, that's a show I got to go find and binge. Man, I grew up with that show. God, I freaking loved it. One of those things I watched all the time. We've also got Mary Ellen Trainor She is the exec on the set that gets hurt on day one. Dude, it's when she takes that thing to the head and he's swinging it around, and Frank is like, watch out. And he just ducks and bam, right into her head. Dude, that is one of the funniest bits of comedy I've seen this whole movie.
Yeah, nurse.
Yeah.
Everybody get it a nurse.
I get nerves over here.
Then that becomes the running gag throughout the movie of her getting hurt, and by the end of the movie, she's like bandaged all up.
Bandaged all up. We haven't mentioned the solid gold dancers, by the way. It's the real girls too. A very 80s thing.
Yes.
And Trainer's character is upset because you can see this dancer's nipples. And by the way, you can actually see the dancer's nipples. And the guy's like, oh, you can barely see them nipples. And Murray's like, see, and look, they're really looking too, you know.
They're really trying to see them.
Oh, because the guy's holding like a light, like a lamppost, and he swings around. Watch out. Just very, very subtly. Thanks, boys. Get the nurse. And when he says get the nurse, make sure nipples are covered up here, will you?
That line is so great.
So
I
good.
forgot he did that, which there's no way he didn't improv that.
Sure. Oh, man. Yeah, there's moments of this being just really, really funny. The homeless guy in the sewer that we talked about, that's Michael J. Pollard. He was like a character actor for years in Hollywood. He is no longer with us either. So yeah, he's here. And then let's see, portraying Bill Murray's mom as a kid. Let's see, we've got Wendy Malick, who is playing his brother's wife. Wendy Malick's been in Hollywood for a while. You guys probably recognize her from doing several things. She was on Just Shoot Me, and she was on Dream On, and she's done she's done several comedies in her time. And then let's see, Lisa Mende as Doris Cross, who played Bill's mother. And by the way, I love how when his dad comes home in that flashback and he's complaining and stuff, and she's like, Mommy's gonna go out. And she turns around and says, Merry Christmas, my angel, and blows him this kiss, and she's gonna leave on Christmas Eve. And I'm like, you don't have to leave. Like, why don't you just stay with your kid? I don't know. That really sticks with me too. Such a hokey moment, man.
Yeah, I didn't get that initially when I first saw the movie, that she was leaving him. She was abandoning him. And
Absolutely.
again, very, very dark for a Christmas movie. Abandoning your son on Christmas. And because when I initially saw it, I thought he was crying because it was just like, one of his last good memories with his mom. I didn't know that was probably the last time he saw her.
Good call. Yeah, good call. Ooh, man. So, look, there's your cast, kids. You know what the story is here. We talked about how they've, updated it to the modern times, or at least modern to this time, and everything that meant. It would look at like a different movie today if you tried to do it during the day's times, of course. And there's been so many versions of this, but we were talking about the big monologue at the end that goes on way too long. Does he get you at all? Because he is visibly getting choked up with tears in his eyes. Does that ever get to you? Or are you just like, oh, stop, I'm done?
It does go on too long. What I do think that it starts working when you, like you said, when he's getting choked up and he's tearing up, and he's like basically almost pleading of like, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for this. Like almost like he's begging and pleading people to give him a second chance because he understands how much people wouldn't believe him, and it doesn't feel so much like he's trying to appeal to the audience, the live audience behind the camera in the actual television universe of them watching him live on TV, but it feels like he's trying to appeal to everybody that he's talking to, whether it be his brother, the other employees that he knows that he's wronged, and his ex-girlfriend. He's just like, I'm ready to be different.
It's really good stuff. I really enjoyed that because it does kind of goes on forever. But he's like, you got to want it. You got to want to have it. You can have it too. I know you can. Like, It's awesome. Like I really enjoy it. I think it's one of the highlights of the movie for me. Him turning around and telling her a bah humbug when he knows what that means. Like, obviously he knows what it means, but he's just so upset at her for not taking time out of her day to stop everything from happening just to tend to his needs.
Yes. Yeah, we get the line of him telling her, like, scrape him off.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do is save yourself. And that, of course, ties into his mother leaving him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like
Mm.
he understood at a very young age, like nobody's gonna come save you. You have to save yourself.
And that's Richard Donner in the control booth when they're doing the show, by the way. Pretty sure he's the one with the headphones on. Looks like him. Pretty sure that's him. Yeah. Well, the movie inside, or the TV movie inside the movie. I love that idea. I love the idea that this is such the Christmas Carol. We're going to do it on the nose. We're not going to run from it. We're going to flat out tell you what we're doing. This is not going to be similar. It's going to flat out be this. And this is what happens when a guy lives his life the way he has, and it's going to catch up to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They made the very smart choice of having both of these versions of Christmas Carol happening parallel to each other. The actual live rendition of it on the TV channel, that is, kind of closer to what the Dickens story is supposed to be. I love, by the way, that they make the choice to call it Scrooge for IBC as well as for the movie, because of course you got to get into business and like intellectual properties and all of these other things. So of course maybe they didn't have the rights to call it Christmas Carol, but they did this very smart thing throughout the movie of these two things running parallel. And so when he drops the coin out the window, he's dropping it to himself, and he is officially crossing into the live Christmas Carol and acknowledging that he is Scrooge.
Yeah, well done. Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. They I think they did a great job here. And look, as far as the theme, and I haven't actually dove into the physical book in a long time, Dickens' book, but I think it's one of those timeless stories, at least for me. It's one of those timeless stories. Dude, the weight of the story is like, you can change, right? But you have to, kind of like he's saying in this dialogue, you have to want it. You have to want that feeling. You have to know, things aren't going to change for you. You need to go out and be the change. Without saying it, that's basically what he's saying here. Is like, you have to be the change that you want. You have to be the one to make it happen.
Yes.
Dude, is all of this just sappy fiction? I mean, do you think this would be another kind of podcast if we go too far on this one, but do you think do you lend credence to the notion of, look, if a man really, really believes in changing, then he can do that. But you have to do it. Like, do you think that a profound change is possible? I'm sure the answer is yes, but have you personally seen it? Do you have a friend or a family member, or maybe you're the one? I don't know, but have you seen that in your time?
Yeah, I believe that people can change, and I of course love that message of Christmas Carol, that it's never too late. And I do believe people can change. Now, do I think that a large percentage of people actually do? No. But that I do think that it happens. Just because it seems like it's a rarity, it is possible for people to change. It is possible for people to be humbled and reformed. Maybe it doesn't take something as extreme as being visited by three ghosts, but sometimes enough will happen to humble you. Um, the the thing that I do love about his monologue, by the way, is he makes the point to say it's not just Christmas. It's not just, this is supposed to be teaching you to appreciate Christmas, because it's just a holiday. This is one time a year. This is supposed to get you to see that Christmas is about, on this day, even if you don't like any of this stuff, even if you think all of this stuff is hokey, just understanding for people that this is a one day where people can be better, and you should be better just because of what this may or may not mean to somebody in your life. Like, you might hate Christmas, but you might know somebody that loves Christmas and they want you there. Just think about this and how we talked about the last time we talked about Christmas during the Batman Returns episode, and how I said that for a lot of adults, Christmas can be very depressing.
Mm.
But you were allowed to enjoy Christmas as a kid. I don't care what my mom had going on. I don't care what she had to do as a single parent to make sure we had Christmas. She did it.
Mm.
And because of that, you have to sometimes understand these things are bigger than just you. It doesn't matter if you don't like any of this and you're going through hell in your life. Somebody else might need you to be a bright point in their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you may not be the main character in the story. You could be in someone else's story.
Yeah, and you definitely don't want to be, of course, what we learn from here, the villain in their story. You want to be the person that uplifts them. You want to be the person that makes them feel good about coming to work, or makes them feel good about you potentially showing up. You don't want to be the person that comes to Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner like, oh boy, gonna have to put up with this guy.
Yeah.
But I love that notion that he's saying it's bigger than just what you personally feel about this holiday. And you're supposed to want to give somebody a miracle and want to give somebody this in this day and get addicted to that feeling that you want to be a good person all the time. And that should be the message from this. Not, hey man, Christmas is great, guys. Let's all celebrate Christmas. It should be a better person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah. That man, I'm a sucker for a happy ending. I've made that known many times. That's why I don't do horror movies. I just don't like horror. That doesn't do anything for me. And I just don't like movies where the bad guy wins. That's why I'm a sucker for comic books. I'm a sucker for Marvel. Just how my brain's wired, man. And I know people can argue the point all day and say things like, well, storytelling, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. If that's what makes you happy, fine. But I need the good guy to win in the end. Like, we're going through something here where we live in this part of the world. Looks like the good guys aren't winning. And, anytime I can get my hands on something where, the good guy or the villain can see the error of his ways, or the good guys win in the end, that's entertainment to me. That's something I can absolutely get into, and it's something I can definitely enjoy. So call me naive and old fashioned, Phil, but that's just kind of how my brain's wired. Do you respond, by the way, in certain ways to whether it's a movie or a TV show? Are you okay with whatever you're watching, or do some themes you're like, yeah, I just want to leave that alone?
In what way? Like
Like like, in other words, like, I don't know, the bad guy wins in the end, for example, or it's the justice wasn't served. God, I know that sounds like an archaic term at this point, but that's kind of where I'm at. Do you run into that at all? Like, do you need a bow at the end of the story or no?
it depends on the type of story you're trying to tell.
Hmm.
If the bad guy winning in the end is kind of the point of the story you're telling, and it's supposed to be impactful because of that, then yeah, that should work. I don't always need a happy ending.
Hmm.
If something is open ended, I'm perfectly fine with that as well.
Hmm. Yeah, like I said, I'm a sucker for a happy ending. I can't help it. It's kind of how I'm wired. Well, look, you and I have said this before on this show. There are certain writers and certain themes that will live forever. If you could go back and tell young Mary Shelley she's going to write a book that will be remembered for hundreds of years after her passing, like, she probably would have laughed at you. But like, Dickens is the same way. Like, just iconic characters, iconic themes. Very, very heavy stuff. If you really break it down, there's some heavy stuff at play in Dickens' original novella. I mean, um, I love the idea that this stuff still continues on for Christmas and beyond. Like, I'm here for it. Is this one of the best adaptations? That's hard to answer, Phil, because there's a ton of them out there, but it's one of the best you've seen, or what do you think?
I think it's one of the ones that has lasted the longest
Mm.
because the cast of this movie, Bill Murray being a lead, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's probably the most memorable for a lot of people.
Mhm. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, and the time period that this came out, because I mean, we talked about how big Bobcat was. I mean, Bill Murray at that time period, off after the success of Ghostbusters and everything. No, this was this. There's a reason why this has lasted as long as it has, and
Mm.
why it's played every year.
Yeah, that's true. He at the point that this movie happened, he had taken 4 years off, which is hard to believe because the first Ghostbusters was in 84 and then this movie happened in 88, and he even mentioned that he would never take this long apart between movies again because he had forgotten things like how to hit his mark, where to stand, when to deliver his lines, like he was rusty. But you're right, he didn't have to physically be active. People really knew who he was. He was really world famous.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. One of the most iconic characters I think the guy's ever played. He was Peter Venkman in Ghostbusters, Bob Wiley, and what about Bob? Phil Connors, Groundhog Day. Phil Connors?
Ned Ryerson.
Bam, punches him right in the face. God, I love that freaking movie. You kidding me? Like I said, I'd be here all day if I start quoting that one. Well, kids, there you have it. There is Scrooged. And, I think we got the point across here, folks, that, people behind the scenes weren't crazy happy to be here, not the least of which was Bill Murray. But to be fair, I don't sense anything in the rest of the cast, Phil. If I sense anything, it's in Murray himself. But I think everybody else is absolutely stepping up to the plate. I didn't bump into any performances whatsoever. I thought the rest of this cast, Phil, can you imagine if he didn't have this level of cast around him? How would this movie have played out considering how unhappy he was?
Yeah, that is an interesting one. That this all does sound kind of funny now. It does sound oddly familiar. Stapled guy from Chicago, Illinois. Took a long time off doing something he was doing that he was very famous for. Then he came back and did something with someone, and they seemed very miserable making it with him.
I see what you're doing there. Yeah. Well,
Listen, sometimes you got to get that first one out the way, and then afterwards it's smooth sailing.
I'm just saying.
Sometimes when you come back to something, you got to get all your frustrations out on that first one. Maybe that first one's a mulligan, and then you go and you it's smooth sailings from there. You can go and have the rest of your career randomly show up in Space Jam. It's all right.
Yeah. Yeah, you brought it back. It's fine. I just remember whoa. I don't play defense. Yeah. I don't know why that sticks out at me from Space Jam. But yeah. Well, there you have it, kids. Bill Murray in Scrooged. And another Christmas classic here on the 6M. We do too many this year. I won't have any left because they only made 10. I'm just kidding. But there's another one in the books for you folks. Well, Phil, before we get out of here, let's see if we can put a bow on this one and give me your last word on Scrooge.
I think this is a great kind of alternative Christmas movie. Very dark comedy, very quirky, weird movie. But there's a reason why it's turned into a cult classic, and I legitimately do feel like it's ahead of its time with some of the satire it's trying to do about television and Hollywood at the time. The time capsule of all of these actors and actresses in this thing. Again, there's a reason why this movie is so popular with people.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think it holds up. And, kids, apart from the haircuts and maybe some of the clothing, I don't think it's too very dated, Phil. Do you come away from this film like, yes, it's made in the 80s? I mean, apart from the soundtrack. I mean, I kind of feel like it's not dated too awful much.
I feel like it's dated, but I think at this point it fits the movie because it's very much a movie from that time period.
I get it, yeah.
Yeah, like him being a television exec at that time and what was happening with television at that time, it works.
Yeah, dated in as much as it is a product of its time. I get
Yes.
that. Yeah. Well, kids, as we sign off, here's to Mary Lou Retton doing backflips as Tiny Tim. So, yeah. By the way, we never did mention the kid who was Grace's son here. I don't think that he ever actually did anything else because there's no information. Nicholas Phillips was Calvin Cooley. So we will end on Calvin Cooley here.
Oh.
And as the kid that just wasn't talking.
He had
Yeah.
to eventually drop the Tiny Tim line as well.
Of course.
Just so in case you did not know that he was the Tiny Tim
Yeah.
of this version.
Little on the nose. That's all right. That's a good moment. I got to say, it's a good moment. It's a good moment. They brought it home. All right, kids. Well, there you have it. There's Scrooged. If you've never seen it, we just ruined the whole freaking thing. Well, if you know the story of Christmas Carol, well, you get it. But anyway, check it out if you haven't seen it in a while. I think you'll be impressed with how it holds up. At least we sure think it does. So stay tuned for more Christmas stuff, more Christmas, glorious Christmas stuff on the way. Stay tuned for that. But for now, that is Scrooged.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.